And when you knock us down, we're going to get up. And on the way up, we're going to bite a kneecap off.
Go ahead and say it, Ed. Go Tigers!
When I woke up this morning, I was feeling pretty dangerous.
You like that? You like that?
F it. Jamar's down there somewhere.
The New Orleans Saints select Marcus Davenport.
No!
Splash Brothers. Yeah.
It's playoff. Keep going, Brace.
The playoffs? Don't talk about playoffs.
If it doesn't fit, you must acquit.
A whole team at the end of the year, whether you win or lose, it's still all about having fun in fantasy football. So we're going to go ahead and get started on this podcast. We're going to go ahead and have a word of prayer. And Lord, just thank you for everything you continue to bless us with. And please be with Nora K. Meredith as she's still undergoing treatment. And hear our prayers for her, Lord. And just if it be your will, put your hand on her, Lord, and heal her of this disease, and just be with her as she's undergoing this treatment, and her family, and just support them and keep a hedge of protection over them, and strength and courage, and as I know they do, they give the glory to you, Lord, and also be with the Louisiana Tech stabbing victims, and as they continue to just recover and grieve for the victims there, Lord, as the same with Jonesboro and the tragic shootings there, and be with those families and just help them turn to you and have something positive for the tragedy to come out in your name, Lord. And also be with the people in Israel, just put a hedge of protection over them, and just protect them and help in the senseless violence, and help them turn to you and realize what they're doing is not in your name, Lord. And then also Mr. Jeff Candy is under whatever medical issues he's having, Lord, just please be with him and his family, Lord. And we just appreciate everything you continue to do for us. Thank you for blessing us and allowing us to enjoy this wonderful this game of football and this fantasy football that we continue to fellowship and do whatever we can to serve in your name, Lord. Just please let us be a light for your name and continue to serve for you. In your name we pray. Amen, Lord. All right, guys, jumping right on in, we want to thank our sponsors, Big Reed BBQ, Automotive Detailing Solutions, This Little Piggy Barbecue Food Truck, Mimi's Children's Boutique, and Doug Demona Farm and Feed. We appreciate you guys supporting us. Y'all please go out and support them. Our title sponsor for this episode is Automotive Detailing Solutions. And they're not the usual car wash, as Matt Smith and ADS provides intricate detailing to groom your vehicle inside and out, focusing on quality over quantity. From carpet and seat extractions to paint polishing, ADS strives to be Jackson Parish's premier automotive detailer. Contact Matthew Smith at 318-475-9492 and add them on Facebook, or just ask the guys at Dirty Boot Sports about their ADS experiences. And I mean, it's that time of the year, guys. Christmas, you're going to a bunch of families, events and stuff. You don't want to show up with a dirty vehicle. Go and see Matt Smith, schedule an appointment, get that vehicle primed for whenever you go over to the in-laws or whatever family, looking nice for Christmas. And I know he would appreciate it. We appreciate you supporting us, Matt. We're going to go ahead and jump right on in. There's several, injuries that happened this past week, none except for Justin Herbert going down with a finger injury, having season-ending surgery. Big shift there. So that's the only, as far as I know, I believe that's the only season-ending injury so far during this past week. We're going to cover some more of those on Start Sit Sleeper later on in the week, but we're going to go and jump right into our waiver wire targets and the quarterback segment, which is the old guys, quote unquote, and Jake from State Farm. And you're going to see why, because number one on the list has got to be Matthew Stafford. Owned in 33.6% of leagues. He's got an excellent matchup this week against Washington. And honestly, the dude, if you can't see me here, I've got egg all over my face because I had him as a sit last week and he proved me wrong tremendously. He goes to Baltimore, puts up 294 yards, 3 touchdowns for a total of 29.6 points in standard PPR leagues. And I mean, he's throwing the ball 41 times a game. Not the completion percentage you want to see, so I kind of expect this to come down, but it's such a good matchup. The worst pass defense in the league in Washington, and Philadelphia is second, but Washington is the worst, and that's who he's going up against this week. and he's only owned in 33% of leagues. If you got Justin Herbert, he might be one that you want to look at to add for the rest of the season, the way he's playing right now. After Washington, he's got New Orleans and then the Giants. New Orleans secondary has not been what it was without Lattimore, and I believe he has at least one more game, so he shouldn't be there for that game. But Cooper Kupp had a big game, Puka Nacua, and then another guy, Demarcus Robinson, for the Rams to emerge after Tutu Atwell got hurt. So look at Matthew Stafford. That's my number one quarterback pick for this week. As far as a waiver wire ad, number two's got to be Joe Flacco. I mean, the old man can still chunk the rock, and it's seeming like he came out of nowhere. But honestly, to me, he didn't, because it seems like every time this guy gets on the field, he seems to put up big numbers because he throws the ball 45 times a game, which is what he's doing right now. And if you got that kind of volume, it doesn't matter efficiency or anything. He's throwing the ball 45 times a game, you're going to have some numbers, and that's what he's doing. 2 weeks ago against the Rams, threw it 44 times, 254, 2 touchdowns, to put up 20 points. Last week against Jacksonville, 45 times, 311 yards, 3 touchdowns. He had a pick and a fumble. So, I mean, you could have added 4 more points to that. So 38 points against Jacksonville if he wouldn't have had the turnovers. This week he gets Chicago, 18th secondary in the league to go up against, and I think we're going to see more of the same, because honestly, Cleveland has nothing to lose to let him go out there and just chunk the ball. So I like Joe Flacco a lot as my number 2 streamer. And then last but certainly not least, Jake from State Farm, Jake Browning, coming in here and really showing that he has been paying attention to Joe Burrow behind the scenes, and making a statement, coming out here the last couple games, putting up at least 33 points each game. One at Jacksonville, 354 yards and a touchdown, and 2 rushes for 22 and a touchdown. And then last week, 18 for 24 against Indianapolis for 275, 2 touchdowns, and then 3 rushes for a rushing touchdown. That's 2 rushing touchdowns, 1 in each the last 2 weeks. This week he gets a little bit tougher defense against Minnesota, which is why he's last on this list. If it would have been a better matchup, I would have probably had him number 1. But I just want to see what he does against a little bit more adversity, a little bit better pass rush, and Minnesota has a little bit better pass rush than those other teams. So I'm a little bit more cautious about this, but he has the weapons. I mean, he has the weapons everywhere on this offense. So I think that is Jake Browning is somebody that could definitely be somebody you pick up to replace Justin Herbert for the rest of the year. And honestly, so they got Minnesota this week. Then he's at Pittsburgh, at Kansas City. So some tougher matchups to end the year. But this week, I definitely think at home against Minnesota could be very doable for him. And that's going to round out very short list for quarterbacks this week. Really not a ton other that I would really want to cover. There's some other quarterbacks that are out there, but they got some tough matchups. Will Levis is going to be at home against Houston. He would have probably been number 4 on this list. He had 20 points last night on Monday Night Football, but Houston's secondary has been okay, and their defense has been coming around, so I don't like that matchup as well for sure. But we're going to go ahead and roll right on into our running backs. There is a slew of running backs that I got on this list, guys, because honestly, I lumped in the handcuffs also because there's a lot of injury questions that still have not been resolved. And then also we're getting that time of the year where some of these teams that are clinching or some of these teams that are already out of the playoffs are going to play some of these backups. And I got some of the higher value ones out there. But number 1's got to be Zeke, which he is over the threshold of 60%. He's owned in 61.7% of leagues. But I mean, you want a workhorse right now for New England, which is what we thought with Ramondre Stevenson being out, but he's owned in 61.7% of leagues. If for some reason he's out there, Zeke is number 1 for sure. Number 2's got to be Ty Chandler, 3.8% owned, going for Minnesota, going up against at Cincinnati this week. But this pretty much has to do with Alexander Madison getting hurt in the last game and then eventually getting ruled out. But honestly, we're kind of seeing Ty Chandler kind of take over this backfield as it was, and he's already kind of been deemed a passing downs back. And with Josh Dobbs kind of getting benched, I don't know what to expect with their other backup quarterback, Nick Mullins, coming in. He could be somebody that checks it down more, but you don't want to not pick up Ty Chandler and find that out. So Ty Chandler's number 2. Number 3's got to be Dante Foreman. Honestly, more egg on my face because I thought Roshan Johnson was going to take over this role, and he comes out and gets like 2 touches for the whole game. And then Dante Foreman comes in after being injured for a game, and then on bye week, he comes in with 11 carries for 50 yards and 2 catches for 22 against Detroit. And now they're going to be up against Cleveland, another tough defense, but honestly, with him having that little bit of pass catching, Justin Fields looking great. I think that Dante Foreman's primed for a pretty solid game against Cleveland, and he's only owned in 26% of leagues. Number 4 for me is going to be Antonio Gibson, coming fresh off a bye, owned in 44.2% of the league. The main reason he's this high on this list going up against the Rams, not the greatest matchup, but Brian Robinson went down with that hamstring injury right before the bye. We have not gotten an update on his status, but you cannot wait to find out an update. If he ends up getting ruled out for another game, Antonio Gibson's a big-time play against the Rams, who they're probably going to have to throw the ball a fair amount because it's a tough running team. And if Antonio Gibson gets about 70-80% of the workload, you're looking at RB2 easy this week. And then number 5 for me is going to be Tajay Spears. Honestly, showed up and showed out on Monday Night Football last night. I mean, don't get me wrong, Derrick Henry got the lion's share of the workload, but it was extremely inefficient. He did not look good at all. Tajay Spears looked very athletic and very electric. 7 for 29 on the carries, but 6 catches for 89 yards. I think Will Levis is finally realizing that he's going to have to throw the ball to Tajay Spears to move the ball, and I think he is somebody that could have a down the run stretch, somebody that could be a solid flex play for you for the rest of the year. He's owned in 37% of leagues. This week he's going to be going up against Houston, who we know can score the ball. And I think Tajay Spears could be somebody you pick up and end up playing down the stretch, especially if some of your starting running backs get benched toward the end of the year, whether they clinched or whether they're just out of playoff contention. Number 6 for me is going to be Keaton Mitchell. He's going to be at Jacksonville, and honestly, we've seen it last week again. The dude is an efficiency machine. He got 9 carries for 54 yards and for an average of 6 yards a carry. Only 1 catch for 8 yards. I'd like to see him get a little bit more catches, but honestly, we're right back where we are. I mean, all he needs is a touchdown, and he's right there in that low-end RB2, and that's only with 9 carries. If they just give him the ball, 12 to 15 times a game, we're looking at probably a low-end not really RB2, but like a high-end flex right now. And this week he's getting at Jacksonville, which is 16th in the league against the rushing. But you got to like the efficiency that he's running at right now. I think it's just a matter of time till they start giving him the ball more. That's number 6, Keaton Mitchell. Number 7 is going to be Kareem Hunt. This is a caveat. There's going to be a lot of caveats for a lot of players and running backs and wide receivers, but this is only if Jerome Ford is out. But Kareem Hunt is owned in 47.4% league. I mean, 47.4% of leagues. He's going up against Chicago this week, and they're 21st ranked against the run. But honestly, we know Kareem Hunt, he pretty much gets a bulk of the goal line carries. Extremely inefficient this year. But if Jerome Ford goes down, he's going to get those passing down work too, I think. And if Ford is out, I think Kareem Hunt's somebody that could help you this week. I don't think Ford's going to be out long term, but it's a solid matchup. And if Kareem Hunt gets more opportunity, he could really help you out this week. Number 8 for me is going to be Chase Brown for Cincinnati. Just kind of bust up on the scene all of a sudden this past week. I really don't know where it came from, but we seen him come out and get a lot more opportunity, kind of like Keaton Mitchell, except for Joe Mixon. I don't think he's in any danger of losing his job, but we seen Chase Brown come in 8 carries for 25 yards, and then 3 catches for 80 yards and a touchdown. And this could be one of those scenarios if for some reason Cincinnati clinches or gets eliminated. I think they see what they have in Chase Brown for the future, especially with Joe Mixon being a little bit older as he is. I don't think he's going anywhere anytime soon, but they're wanting to I guarantee you they're going to want to make a decision if Chase Brown is their future or not. And I think he has a good chance to get more opportunity. This week he's going up against Minnesota. I don't know if it's this week or not, but I think it's going to be too late to find out if you wait another week if he does get more opportunity this week. And not to mention he's a big-time handcuff for Joe Mixon. So Joe Mixon owners definitely want to pick him up. And then last but certainly not least, but on this list pretty much for the last several weeks, Rico Dowdle. We've seen him turn in a lot more opportunity this past week. for Dallas into like 12 points. That's a solid flex play right there. 12 carries, 46 yards, and a touchdown, and then 1 catch. But honestly, still right back where and that was against Philadelphia, pretty tough run defense. But we're still hanging out where we were. I mean, a solid low end flex play, but when they clinch, are they going to bench Tony Pollard and give Rico Dowdle the reins and see what he can do with a full workload? I don't know. But this week at Buffalo, one thing Buffalo does not do that great is stop the run. 19th in the league against stopping running backs. And he's only owned in like 8% of leagues. So Rico Dowdle is definitely somebody. And honestly, guys, at this point in the league, the year, if you got bench players you're not going to play, dump them, pick up your handcuffs, and especially if you clinch the playoffs. I mean, I know other guys are going to jump out there and pick up some of your guys. I mean, unless you just got some studs on your bench that you really can't give up. If you got these bench guys that are kind of mediocre players, like, wide receivers you'll never play or never slot in or anything like that, drop them. Backup tight end, drop them. Backup quarterback, drop them, and pick up some of these backup running backs that you're for your starters or guys that are starting to get playing time or that have a good chance to get a lot more playing time down the stretch. Because if you got some stud running backs and those teams clinch, then there's a good chance they're going to get rested. And you don't want to be hung out to dry while everybody's already picked up all the handcuffs. So go ahead and be looking for those handcuff running backs out there, guys, and be picking them up. And that's going to round out our running backs. Let's go ahead and jump right on in our wide receivers. And number one's got to be Noah Brown. Now, there's a caveat to this. If for some reason that CJ Stroud ends up being ruled out, because he got put in concussion protocol. But if for some reason he ends up getting ruled out this week, I do not like Noah Brown as much. But if CJ Stroud ends up clearing with the Nico Collins injury last week, Noah Brown is going to be their number one wide receiver. And a number one wide receiver in Texas, we have seen what they can do, and it's a wide receiver 2, solid wide receiver 2 at this point. And then you get a plus matchup this week at Tennessee, 25th against the wide receivers in the league. So Noah Brown's got to be number one for me until we know what's going on with CJ Stroud. And then number 2's got to be OBJ. Honestly, a spot that I've been pushing off because I feel like it's kind of fool's gold, but the dude keeps doing it. He's not playing but like 50-60% of the snaps, but when he is in there, he's getting targeted. Last week, 10 targets, 4 catches for 97 yards and a touchdown. He's still got that boom bust potential. He's still got that big play potential. This week he's going to be at Jacksonville, who's 27th against wide receivers, and I think that is just way too much of an opportunity for him to have another big game like he did last week against a team in the Rams who've been kind of decent against the wide receivers this year. So OBJ would be my number one if for some reason Noah Brown, for some reason if CJ Stroud is if he is ruled out, OBJ would be my number one. And then number 3's got to be Jackson Smith-Njigba, JSN for Seattle. Still doing the same thing. His targets seem to be increasing. He had Drew Lock under center last week, and he had more targets than he's had all year, I think. And it's still kind of the same caveat is he's kind of a handcuff, but he's a low-end flex play. He only had like 4 for 25, but he had 7 targets last week. This week, they get the Philadelphia secondary that's 31st in the league against wide receivers. And Darius Slay is going to be the number one corner on either Lockett or DK Metcalf, and that's going to force more targets to JSN while he's on the field. He's only owned in 58% of leagues, and honestly, if they do end up clinching or getting eliminated, I think they're going to give him a lot more run as the wide receiver 1 to see what he can do. That's just my speculation, but it's a good matchup this week. I think he's somebody that needs to be owned in all leagues, and especially down the stretch. Here we are. And then number 4 for me has got to be Zay Jones. Owned in 27.5% leagues. This week, a tough matchup at home against Baltimore, but last week he had 14 targets. Okay, we've known that Trevor Lawrence likes Zay Jones a lot, but man, 14 targets now, not great efficiency. 5 catches for 29 yards at Cleveland, which is a really tough matchup. But 14 targets, dude, that's like wide receiver one target load right there. You can't ignore that. And not saying he's going to be a wide receiver one, but if he keeps getting, 10 to 12 targets a game, that's a wide receiver two volume if he catches, 70 to 80% of those. Tough matchup this week against Baltimore, but down the stretch at Tampa Bay, home against Carolina, and then at Tennessee to close out the season. That's some good matchups for Zay Jones, and with Christian Kirk being out and Calvin Ridley kind of being boomer bust, I think Zay Jones might be the man. So I like him a lot. He would be a little bit higher on this list, but it's a tough match against Baltimore, and I need to see a little bit more production from him before I kind of fully commit. Number 5 for me has got to be Jaden Reed. I told you last week he was my sleeper at wide receiver. He showed up and showed out for me, put up 20 points last week. I played him in my flex in one of my leagues, and boy, was I glad I did. With Christian Watson out, he just seems to be a very intricate part of this offense. Last week, not really efficiency as far as the production and yardage, but 10 targets, 8 catches for 27 yards, 4 carries for 38 and a touchdown. This week, he's going to be at home against Tampa Bay, which is a great matchup, 29th in the league against wide receivers. If Christian Watson is out, man, Jaden Reed might be up to number 2 for me on this list, or number 3 for sure. And he's just extremely productive. He's owned in 49% of leagues. But if Christian Watson plays, he's going to be a little bit lower, because it seems like when Watson plays, he's not as productive as whenever Watson is playing. So, but that's Jaden Reed. I like him a lot down the stretch. He seems to be really getting his groove in this offense. Number 6 for me is going to be Demario Douglas. Ended up getting ruled out last week. I told you all that might happen. He's still in concussion protocol. As far as I know, there's not been an update. But the only thing I can say, he's only owned in 30% of leagues, but when he plays, he is the number 1 in this offense. There's no doubt. He's the number 1 in this offense when he plays, whether it's Bailey Zappi, whether it's Mac Jones. Either way, they're playing a kind of a tough matchup, which is why he's so far down on this list. Again, at home against Kansas City, who's 8th in the league against the wide receivers. But Demario Douglas is very quick, very fast, great PPR option. And if he is healthy, I think he's a solid flex play at worst if he's healthy and comes back this week. Number 7 for me is going to be Curtis Samuel. I mean, we're getting pretty deep here, but these are all guys that have somewhat flex value. But Curtis Samuel coming off a couple solid weeks right before their bye, and getting more involved in the offense. But this week at the Rams, 17th against wide receivers, but they've been better as of late. And I really think they had a rough week last week against Baltimore, but before that, they were a lot better. But Curtis Samuel, this Washington offense throws the ball a ton. And he seems to be getting more involved in the passing game. And there's a couple tough matchups against the wide receivers coming up. And with him getting typically the third best corner, I think that is better for Curtis Samuel when they're up against tougher matchups. And they got the Rams, and they got the Jets, and they got San Fran, and then they got Dallas. So these are all really tough wide receiver matchups, which I think bodes well for Curtis Samuel down the stretch. He's only owned in 41.6% of leagues, but I think that does benefit him. So I like Samuel down the stretch, and he's somebody that's fairly available and Mike could help you out. And then last but certainly not least, another definitely a volume play, Jonathan Mingo, somebody starting to emerge in this Carolina offense with at least 9 targets the last 2 weeks, 9 last week, but only 2 catches for 22 yards against New Orleans, which is a fairly tough matchup against wide receivers. But this week he's going to be in Atlanta, which is another tough matchup on paper, but they have not been as good as of late against wide receivers. They were a little bit against Tampa Bay, but before that they were not. So Jonathan Mingo's getting the volume. I feel like he's just on the edge of having somewhat of a breakout game. He was a big-time prospect. He got drafted fairly high in the draft. And I feel like this could be maybe a get-right game for him and possibly a breakout game. So at New Orleans is definitely a deeper league thing, but he might be somebody to pick up because he's definitely not going to get his playing time cut toward the end of the season. So I like Jonathan Mingo down the stretch for sure as a possible play to replace somebody that gets benched as the playoffs approach. And then that's going to round out our wide receivers. And I'm going to jump right on in our tight ends. And honestly, they're the same as they were last week. A little bit different order, but Isaiah Likely's got to be number 1, owned in 45.8% of leagues. He's going to be at Jacksonville, which is a great matchup for him this week. They're 27th against tight ends. It's going to be at Jacksonville, so we won't have to worry about the weather. And last week, 7 targets, 5 for 83 and a touchdown. I mean, that is as Mark Andrews like of a stat line as you can get. And let's see if he can keep it rolling. That's 2 weeks in a row, though, with at least 6 targets. And I think you do worse than starting him up against a really good matchup. So Isaiah Likely's got to be number 1, and he won't make the list next week because he'll be over 60%. There's no doubt. Number 2 for me is going to be this week. It's going to be Chigo Okonkwo. And Okonkwo last night had a solid performance, put up 9 points, 6 targets, 5 for 46 for Will Levis at Miami. This week he's going to be at home against Houston, who's 29th in the league against tight ends. He is an athletic, good pass-catching tight end. Will Levis is getting more comfortable in this offense and starting to find him more. I think it could be a breakout week for him. And I really think Okonkwo could be somebody that could help you out a lot down the stretch as Will Levis is getting more comfortable in this offense. And like I said, going to be at home against Houston this week. And really, honestly, they're going to be passing the ball a lot more because they're going to be Houston, Seattle, and then Houston and Jacksonville. Some tough offenses for their defense, but they're also not that great defenses for their offense. So I think Okonkwo could be somebody you pick up and start down the stretch almost the rest of the way as he gets that floor of about 6 targets for you. And all he needs is a touchdown to jump into the top 5 or 6 tight end during the week. And then last but certainly not least, Tyler Conklin. Honestly, he's just been fairly reliable with a base of about 6 to 7, really about 7 points for a while now. And with the ability to jump up in 12, 14 point range with a little bit more volume. But last week, 6 targets, 4 for 57 at Houston. Now he's going to be at Miami, then Washington, at Cleveland, then New England. So a little bit tougher stretch at the end, but man, at Miami and then at home against Washington the next couple of weeks, those are good matchups for Tyler Conklin. I will say, though, if Zach Wilson does not start, I don't know how confident I am in him, but he did get 9 targets from their backup a couple weeks ago. So, but this week at Miami, 5th, they're kind of mid-pack against the tight end, but we know that Miami's going to put up some points. Even against this New York Jets defense is really good, but I think that's going to keep the Jets passing. I think that's going to make Tyler Conklin a lot more valuable down the stretch. And that's going to wrap up our tight ends, and we're going to jump. I'm going to give you a couple streaming defenses that I like. Number 1's probably going to be a little surprising, but it's going to be Chicago at Cleveland. Mainly because Chicago the last couple of weeks has been real impressive on defense, putting up a lot of good scoring. They've had no touchdowns, but they've had several picks. Getting turnovers, getting some sacks. But, I mean, Detroit, they really shut that offense down, and they're a lot better offense than Cleveland is. And this is going to be at Cleveland, so it's going to be some nasty weather. I think this could be a lower scoring game than people think, even though I do like Flacco against Chicago. I think it's just because he's going to throw the ball so much. But he is prone to turnovers, and I think that could help Chicago's defense out. So I like Chicago at Cleveland. Number 2 is going to be Atlanta against Carolina. Honestly, anybody against Carolina is a good matchup, and Atlanta's on, and they don't put up a lot of points, which is why they're number 2. Otherwise, they'd be number 1 at Carolina. But another solid defense that you could stream. And then last but certainly not least, Las Vegas at the Chargers. And this primarily is because we don't know much about Easton Stick that's taken over for Justin Herbert being out. And also last week, Las Vegas held Minnesota in check and sacked Josh Dobbs 5 times and held them to 3 points, putting up like 17 points in standard league. So I don't think they do that against the Chargers this week. But, I mean, honestly, I think that this Chargers offense could struggle if this Easton Stick is not as competent as we're thinking. So I think that's a solid chance. It's definitely a last-ditch effort. But if you're really desperate, Las Vegas at home against the Chargers could be a good streaming option for you. And then just a couple kickers just to throw in there for you if you're looking for one. Lucas Havisk of the Los Angeles Rams. Didn't even know who this guy was, but Lucas Havisk for the Los Angeles Rams at home against Washington. Great option. And then last but certainly not least, a guy that's been on this list several times, Jason Sanders for Miami at home against the Jets. He's been putting up some solid points. So those are 2 guys that definitely are out there in a lot of leagues and good options to pick up as a kicker. And that's going to round out our waiver wire episode for week 15. first off, I just want to thank everybody for listening. We appreciate everybody. Please remember to like, subscribe, download, and give us some feedback on your podcast applications of choice, and give us some good ratings. Let us know what you want to hear more, what y'all want to hear any of. Please remember to keep our prayer requests in your thoughts and prayers. We really appreciate it. Those people could use all the thoughts and prayers that they can get. And y'all just hang in there. Playoffs are here. Good luck in the playoffs. I'm going to be coming back at you later on this week with Start, Sit, Sleeper. And give you some good start sit sleeper options. But y'all, if you made the playoffs, congratulations. If you didn't, don't give up. Don't be that team that just doesn't play anybody, because nobody enjoys that in fantasy. And y'all keep chasing that trophy. We'll catch y'all later this week.